I'm going to discuss with you today is what you already know. I'm not going to be telling you that jargon of climate change or things that are abstract. I'm going to talk about things that you are doing, but how we can do it differently within the context of the changing climate. We are seeing droughts that are already affecting agricultural production, that are affecting cattle wrestlers, we are seeing floods, we are seeing all these things are as a result of environmental change. But to address these things, we need to go beyond the environment itself and ask ourselves, what can we do as people to make sure that we can address these challenges of the changing climate, of ensuring that when there are droughts, we can be able to still cope with those droughts, we can produce food, we can dry food. Because we are talking at a time when Africa, including Kenya, is having challenges, is facing challenges, youth unemployment. 1 in every 6 Kenyan is unemployed, especially the youth. We're having people who are going to bed hungry in the continent, 257 million. But sadly, so in a continent where we have 65% of uncultivated arable land, and we're having 257 million people going to bed hungry. This is unacceptable. We are having mothers as we speak now who cannot feed their 5 years old, their kids to even reach 5 years because of lack of food. These things are realistic and they're happening each and every day. As we're speaking now, we have our youth who have abandoned opportunities and sometimes don't even want to get to be trained even to do something because they think that it's greener elsewhere, and they get drowned in the Mediterranean Sea as they want to cross to move to Europe because they think it's greener there. We get a lot of them who are sold into slavery as they cross the Sahara Desert in search of opportunities. These challenges are with us. But as we're speaking like this, each and every year, the continent loses food that is worth 48 billion US dollars. And here in Kenya, Kenya loses food every year worth 500 million US dollars. And this is approximately about 50 billion Kenyan shillings. Why? Because value is not added to what is produced. If you came from Kirinyaga, right? Yes. And I'm sure as you are coming, or you know this, people by the side of the road, you see them put beautiful tomatoes, but those tomatoes get thrown away when people don't buy them. That's food that is wasted. We know people who are able to grow their maize, but those maize get spoiled because they cannot be able to dry them and store them. There's no preservation techniques that are put in place. We have a country where you guys import fish from China, but there is fish that could be produced here and dried, and that's costing the country 1 billion each and every year. So all these things are realistic things, and they are reality that we face. But to be able to address these things, we need to think differently. And my discussion with you here today is, how do we drive a mindset change to ensure that these challenges we face, we can turn them to opportunities? Because I think we really need to practicalize this and discuss it in such a way that as you go back and engage with your groups and your teams and with the youth, you can start to pass a different message to them that climate change is here with us, but we can address it using different ways. But the first thing we need to do is to look at ourselves and start to see how we can work together in what I call selflessness. How we can banish hatred and start loving one another and start listening and start understanding how we can learn from one another, because each and every one of us is blessed with a skill and with a talent. But sometimes we forget that we can be able to offer that opportunity to be able to address these challenges. If you take, for example, in the 1960s, at the time when most African countries were getting their independence, 1960, most countries in the continent were ahead or even at par with their counterparts in Asia. When you talk here, we're talking Singapore, we're talking South Korea, we're talking Malaysia. But in 1963, South Korea was a beneficiary of food aid from Kenya. And Kenya even gave them a loan of 10,000 US dollars, which they later repaid back. So what is this telling us? If you fast forward till today, what you will notice is that within the same period of about 56 years or so, South Korea without minerals, South Korea without gold, without diamonds, without oil, actually have grown the economy, which is 15 times bigger than the economy of all African countries combined. And the question is, how did they do that? They built on the strength of their people. Yeah. They leveraged on what they had in abundance, which was people, because people, the quality of people, their skills, their talents constitute capital that is worth more than money. And that was the secret. It was not juju, it was not magic. They used common sense, they used logic, building and leveraging on their people to focus in the areas in which they had comparative advantage on. In this era of globalized competition, African economies are on average, as we're speaking today, African economies are 20 times less productive than their counterparts in the global world. That then means that an opportunity occurring anywhere in Africa is likely to be won over by someone else who are not by an African because we are less productive. We do not add value to what we produce. And therefore we export things in raw format. So we export employment and import unemployment. And then how will you ever create opportunities for everyone? You cannot. We cannot, and these are realistic things that we need to be discussing them each and every time and start looking for solutions. And that is why I said that it is good to discuss climate change issues from how we can engage and come together as a people to solve it, rather than just telling you about graphs, about statistics. Yes, they're fine. But what can we do about it is the essence of what I'm trying to discuss here. And so a very typical example, as I said, that African economies are 20 times less productive. A very typical example is Africa is a world-leading producer of cocoa. I'm sure we all have eaten chocolates or bought them for our kids and for friends. And out of this cocoa, you have Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, you have Ghana, is the biggest producer of cocoa. And out of the market value of this cocoa that the world have 100 billion, Africa is only getting about 2%. You produce sweat as you produce, and others are eating sweets. You sweat and others eat sweets. It's terrible. Yeah, there is something wrong with this continent, I'm telling you. We sweat as others eat, and then we stand there and complain and blame one another. And if that then means that 98 billion worth of opportunity, because they get only 2%, it means 98 billion worth of opportunities end up in other people's countries and create jobs for them rather than creating the jobs here. If you take cassava, cassava is a crop that is climate resilient. It can grow during drought. It can grow when there are floods. You do not need to water it to grow. Yes. But cassava is a crop that we grow, and the highest producer of cassava is in the African continent. But we still go hungry. We have abandoned the crop and we're importing some foreign food and eating it, and you know the consequences of this. And cassava is an allergic-free. It's an allergic-free crop that it doesn't, if you are allergic to anything that you eat cassava, you're not allergic to it. Cassava can produce up to 300 different products, whether it's cassava bread, cassava cake, cassava flour, cassava beer, and etc. You name it. Even the leaves are nutritious. Vitamin C, vitamin B, all these things. But we've abandoned the crop. We've abandoned the crop. We depend on things where we spend more money to import rather than using and building and growing this crop and processing it so that we can start making making ugali. That should be making bread with cassava. And you will see kids healthy. You will see people healthy. But we abandon it. And we want someone to come from elsewhere to tell us that no, this is something we need to do, because we do not believe in ourselves. You know, we hate one another so much, and I don't know why. Africans really hate one another so much, and it is that division that is destroying this continent. I hope that these discussions, as you take it, you also go down, you start to inspire people with this. We can start to bring a different mindset change to start solving our problems. And I'm really happy that you guys are here today. We are talking about youth. 12 million of them in the continent get to the labor market every year. That's every year 12 million people, young people are getting, and they don't have the jobs. They only compete, 12 million competing with 3 million jobs. And in Kenya, each and every year, Kenya is having about 800,000 to about 1 million youth get into the labor market and there are even no jobs. Every year, and the number is increasing. So the question we must always ask is, what can we do using our own selves to be able to create an environment and do what we can do in our own capacity to address challenges, but looking those challenges as disguised opportunities. Because every challenge is a disguised opportunity, and someone's challenge is an opportunity for another person. That is the reality in the world. And once we start seeing like that, we'll notice that there is no challenge that we cannot solve. Because what we know is that if we are selfless, selflessness is I am doing something to solve a problem for the better good of everyone. And if we become selfless and throw away hatred and throw away jealousy, we will start to see that each and everyone, when he brings his talents and skills together, regardless of what you do and where you come from, you will start to see that the solutions to a problem will be solved. If you just take maize, the person who produces maize doesn't have a market. Then a youth comes in with an ICT application that can connect that farmer to a market. And then someone, through that ICT application, finds a solar dryer that can be connected to that farmer to dry her maize, to dry her vegetables. At the end of the day, those vegetables will not spoil because they have been dried. They can be preserved, and a market can be connected where that farmer can be able to sell and get money, and even the person connecting will also get money. Everybody benefits.
Sure.
That's what we need to be doing. Because we are living at a time where sometimes we doubt ourselves on whether we can be able to do anything. That if we don't have money, we cannot do anything. Money is not everything. If you have money and you don't have the skills and the people to do it, the money will still be there and people will not be there to do it. Or you don't have the people with the right attitudes. Because talking now, we have youth mostly who have an attitude of becoming rich quickly without doing anything. And that kind of attitude is one whereby we have to continuously discourage. Because what we know is that a skilled person is capable of turning challenges into opportunities, is 4 times the value of produced capital, it's 15 times the value of natural capital. This then means that the quality of people is what matters. If someone is skilled, or someone can be guided and trained, that person is worth 62% of what is called wealth. Because he can use his services to create opportunities and make more money. So a skilled person is crucial, and that is what I'm calling the quality of people. That the quality of people is very, very important. And let me just tell you something here, that throughout the centuries, what we know is that men and women have taken the initiative with nothing. They never had money, they were not rich, they didn't come from rich homes, they were not in high government positions, or they were not CSs or MCAs or governors. But these men and women took the first step down a new road. They thought, if a kid is going to bed hungry, there is something we can do about it. They had no money, they were not from powerful organizations or from government or CEOs of banks. The only thing they had was an idea and a vision. And their goals were not the same, but the only thing they had in common was that they wanted to take a first step without anything to solve a problem. And this first step that they wanted to take, their visions were not borrowed from anywhere, the ideas were not borrowed. But the commonality was that they wanted to solve a problem to make sure that people should not suffer. And the response they received was nothing but hatred and jealousy. Just your idea, people start to hate it. Just your idea, people start to be jealous. But they did not give up. These great creators, thinkers, inventors, they stood against these people who started hating this idea. Because what happened was that any great idea they brought was opposed. Any great thought they brought to solve a problem that was affecting everybody was opposed. And those opposing were not providing alternatives. And that represents our society today. That's who we are, because we hate one another so much. We don't want to prosper. That's why Africa is always where it is. But we can change this. And the only way to change it is when we gather people that can start to think the same way. And that's why I'm really glad to be talking to you guys here today. And thanks, Pastor Minor, for bringing this great team here. When we have that common vision, we can move forward. So these ideas they brought up, they were opposed. And every great invention that was put in place was denounced. The airplane that was developed at that time to transport people was considered impossible. Even when they say we can build an airplane, they say, no, you cannot. The naysayers say, no, you cannot, forget, you are wasting your time. And the Anesthesia that was proposed at the time was considered sinful. A motor vehicle that was to be developed at the time said, no, this is not even something you should think about, it's impossible. But the men of this unborrowed vision went ahead to do what they thought was right and was good for the people. They went ahead. They selflessly believed that their solutions were not about them, but it was about everyone, and that if they can solve problems, it will benefit everyone and society will be happy, because people were hopeless, and hopelessness breeds hatred. And the only way to make sure that you can bring hopefulness to people is to start devising solutions to solve problems. They fought, they suffered, and they paid the price of hatred. But despite all this hatred, they became victorious, because the solutions they put in place did not only show those who were hating the ideas, but those who were hating those ideas started to embrace those solutions and became the beneficiaries of it. What the message I'm passing is simple. When you start an idea, you have an idea for the better good of society and community. Never give up because people don't like it. Because when they start to see the results, and when they start to be beneficiaries of the results, even that idea will not even be championed by you anymore, it will be championed by them. Sure. Because I'm saying this because we usually sometimes give up, especially the young people. They give up because they said that someone is complaining, oh, this idea is not good. When you have not even tested it, and then you give up. Because people do not like anything that is new. That's the nature of our society, especially in the African continent here. So these people showed selflessness. They showed dedication. And this dedication, engaging everyone, moving forward with the willing, with the what I call coalition of the willing, building alliances, is what we call innovative volunteerism, because we believe that together we can make a difference and solve the problems of climate change and put food on the table and create opportunities for the youth. And that we can then be able to leverage on each and everyone's strengths and skills, but in a very structured, guided way, and to tap into the opportunities. And the biggest opportunity we have is in our grow value chain. How you produce, how you process, how you connect to markets in a way that you're not destroying the environment, but at the same time can create opportunities, because the agro value chain is worth $1 trillion US. If you take the 50 billion that is being lost here in Kenya each and every year, and you can be able to inspire you to engage, so that we can engage the youth to start training them to develop solar dryers, so that they can add value to the food that is being produced. They will be making money, but they will be also reducing the food post-harvest losses. And at the same time, we will have a peaceful community that have environment intact and have opportunities that are provided for people. So the baseline here is that at the core of all this, we must then start to develop the quality of people we want, and the easiest development is to change their mindsets. And the biggest school we have is the mind. The biggest school we have is the mind. And once the mind is positive, everything is positive and solutions will flow. The biggest school we have is the mind. Because there are studies that were done recently by Aga Khan University that shows that only 30% of youth prioritize work. 70% of them do not love to work anything, and they want shortcuts to achieve the best lifestyle that they want to live. that means we have a problem in society.
Sure.
And this is what is breeding greed, is breeding jealousy and hatred, and has divided the African continent. So the focus now should be, how do we nurture people? By guiding and working with the willing. I keep saying working with the willing. You will never get everyone on board, but the others who are not on board will come through when they start to see that we are doing something. And the focus should be on how do we create and foster solutions, but drawing from the fact that when you are doing something for the better good of community, you are not only addressing a problem, but at the same time, you are actually utilizing your skills and talents to do what you are brought to this earth to do. Because we must be at the service of others, not always wanting others to be at our service. Others will sit and complain about others. But what are you doing yourself? You are only complaining, because complaining is not a strategy. Talk is cheap, as they say. So what we need to do is to answer this question: how can we change people's motivations from personal benefit to problem solving? How can we change people's motivations from personal benefit to problem solving? And how can we change the thinking from focusing on personal benefit to devising solutions to the problems that we face in the country and the continent? And these I will sum up in 6 key action areas that I think that I can leave you with as you also go to think how you can impact this in your society. And the first action point that I think is to move away from this development that is premised on projects around money. Just that without money you cannot even start an idea. I tell people most of the time, especially those who finish school, they say we don't have a job. Say government has not given us a job. Government doesn't give jobs to people. The rule of government generally is to create an enabling environment that if you want to start a business, it should be easier to register the business. That if you want an idea, you should then be able to use your idea to create your own enterprises. There is actually very little government can do. I am not defending government. I'm just telling you, I'm an African. I was born in this continent. I'm a Cameroonian. I grew up in a very poor home. I went to school without shoes, and I grew up herding goats. But the inspiration I got was that with hard work, dedication, perseverance, humility, and above all respect, your dreams are valid. And I followed through that up to where I am today. So the point I'm making is that when you look at the way the discussions are that, no, we cannot do anything because we don't have money. So this first point is diverse from development premise on projectization around money. Because let me explain what that means. The belief is that to change mindsets, nobody is against money. We're saying when you have an idea and you start doing something and little resources comes in, you will do more. But when you don't start, because you think there's no money, even when the money comes, nothing will happen. That's the truth. That's why we hear big billions in Africa today. We don't see what they do. Because people don't plan. They don't strategize. They don't put in place the working processes and build the capacity of people so that when there are opportunities, they can now advance it forward to make meaningful impact. And that is a problem of the African continent. And we cannot address climate change when that mentality and thinking of only money. Because without the money, what will you do? You have to start doing something. Sure. And the biggest money is us, the people. Our skills and talents are worth more than money. And that is why I said a skilled person is 62% of the entire world combined. Even a bank account, even a house and asset cannot give up to that percentage. So Africa's development, still on that particular point, on how we can diverse from development that is always about money to start looking internally on what we can do, because money is part of a means. It is not an end.
Sure.
And we make money ourselves. So how do we surrender our power to glorify and adore money as if money is more powerful than us? How can you make this and then you start glorifying it as if you make it, you can scatter it? So Africa's development is always framed around undertaking projects that are tied to big budgets. In every country, big budgets. The focus is always on the amount of money set aside to undertake actions. Amount of money set aside to undertake action. And considering Africa's economies are the least productive, we are the least productive because 20 times less productive than any other part of the world. This paradigm that we must always put money up front without even showing where the other one went to has disarmed the continent from taking responsibility, and the budgets are always beyond reach. And that's why the continent keeps borrowing, and enslaving us, enslaving the citizens. This makes it unacceptable socially, economically for the continent to extend a begging bowl to always think that someone else will fund their projects, and thereby deflect responsibility to those who can fund it. And this has resulted in disjointed priorities where a priority is hardly logically completed because someone else have to do it. And the paradigm shift should be to make Africans know that they have everything they need to empower the people to self-believe in themselves, to feel and believe that they are important. Because one thing that has happened in the continent is that we've not made our own brothers and sisters to feel that they are important and that they are the custodians of our development. We've made them to be second-class citizens. We've made them, sometimes when you talk on idea, they say, someone else can come and do it. I cannot do it because I don't know how to do it. There is nothing we don't know how to do it. And that is why this collective alliance building, bringing different people, because all of you seated here, if they take all the ideas you have and your skills, I'm telling you, this room will be worth more than 1 billion, just in terms of ideas and your skills. But we don't recognize it. And that is why we must start recognizing it. That's why I say that the paradigm shift should be to make Africans know, feel and believe that they are important and that they are the solution bearers to every challenge we face in the continent. Sure. And a good example is the cooperatives community. I mean the community cooperatives. You do chamas. When I was growing up, my mother and a group of other women will contribute little money that can be able to buy books to send us to school. They will contribute little money that can buy a bench in church. They will contribute little money that can help others start a little business. What happened to that logic? Why are we not building on it? Those are indigenous solutions that have helped us to be where we are today. So why have we abandoned it and always think that if someone cannot come from somewhere to do it, we cannot start? They did it. So the point I am making, that a good example is a community cooperative that have successfully been used to pool resources and accomplish development actions. Village mates come together and pool their skills and little resources to undertake notable economic projects. For example, there is a group of 500 women that have pooled their resources to acquire solar dryers and preserve their cassava harvest. And there was no money coming from abroad or elsewhere to cost them to do this. And such local structures that pool financial and technical resources should be nurtured and developed. And that takes me to my second point. There is this nonsense in this continent. This nonsense called African time. There is nothing like African time on earth. Meetings that are supposed to start at 9 a.m. start at 1. In the name of African time. Some ugly, terrible belief that we have adored it, that it has not brought anything tangible to us, for us, and we are proudly talking about it. And that is the reason why we are 20% less productive than any other country on earth. This continent is making, sometimes you don't understand, meetings in Africa hardly start on time. And it is due to this lack of, to this laxity, because there's so much laxity. Get up, watch the sun shining, get back and sleep, and complain how God is so wicked against us. God loves this continent so much. It's the only continent with the best weather. You go to Europe, winter, you are freezing. It's the only continent where we have 3 square meals or even beyond a day. People elsewhere don't have. It's the only continent where you can throw a seed somewhere and it start growing on its own. There's no winter to kill it or hot summers to kill it. But we take these things for granted. It's the only continent where the brotherhood, where you can come and say, hey, my brother, what can we do? And you even come together to do some other thing. Other continents don't do that. These are valuables that we have that we don't even appreciate. Sure. We keep complaining, oh, we don't have. Oh, the world is coming to an end. Of course, I believe that on Fridays in mosque and in Sundays in churches, God looks down on us and look and laugh and say, this is my people, I gave them everything, and they're not using it. The sun, 365 days, yet we cannot harvest it. We have 360 million people going to 600 million people energy impoverished. 65% of land. We have 257 million people who don't have food. Yet everything is... Africa is too rich to be poor. We are too rich to be poor. And poverty is a mindset. It is a mindset. But the mind itself is the biggest school. That means that if we turn it to be positive, we'll have the solutions for everything. So we must banish this nonsense called African time. We see people coming late to meetings, and what should happen is, if you are organizing, because I'm giving you the tools and the solutions that I think that we need to use. If you are organizing a meeting, do not delay, and ensure to kickstart on schedule and finish on schedule. If you have 2 people, 3, start with them. Start to set the example. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel when we already have the wheel? We will be marking time in the same place. Instead, we're supposed to be ahead. So, build on Africa's success stories. That was my 3rd point. The 4th one is to be able to bring this mindset to reality. We must leverage on existing social institutions. I strongly believe the last best hope for Africa to drive change and make sure that mindsets can start to become positive mindsets is to leverage on our social institutions. No matter how we talk and no matter what we do, if we do not leverage on our social institutions, especially religious institutions, churches, or mosques, and also traditional institutions, including kingdoms, and even our educational primary and high school, especially I focus more on primary and high school, because at that point they say you can bend a tree when it is still young. And if you don't bend it when it is still young, then it will grow up. Once it's grown, you cannot be able to bend it. So I strongly believe that if we can leverage, especially on our religious institutions, to drive value-driven actions aligned to the challenges that Africa faces, we might make huge progress, because these are structures. Structures are important. And once we engage people and start to infuse the message of love, the message of selflessness, the message of hopefulness around how we can bring our skills to drive solutions within the frameworks that we have and to push at these challenges and create opportunities, will make a huge impact. For example, in every religion, having segments of the population hungry and deprived is equivalent to sin of selfishness. That's the truth. And religious institutions should tailor preaching of values to directly attack the negative mindsets prevalent in the continent. I strongly believe that can happen. Schools should include a formal curricula in psychology, socials, that should teach values of solutions focus, not money focus, from an early age, and be taken as compulsory courses throughout primary and high schools. But I still believe the church structure should be leveraged. And that takes me to my 5th point. We're almost done. And the 5th point is what I explained called innovative volunteerism. If you look at the continent today, including Kenya here, you will notice that a lot of people don't have a platform. Because people always say, no, I don't know where to go to. I don't have a platform. And what you notice is that there are so many platforms. But what you also notice is people think that they must be of a certain class to be engaged in certain platforms. But we said each and every one is important. Each and every one matter, regardless of where you come from, how you look, how tall or how short, how big, it doesn't mean anything. Your skill is important. And because of that skill or talent, you can be guided in a structured way in which you can solve a problem and make money, but at the same time build yourself to be a solution provider. And we came up with this logic called innovative volunteerism. So we're leveraging on that innovative volunteerism as a tool is a platform that we have created to engage especially young people to exercise their skills for impactful solutions. But what we have also tried to do is that this platform is centered around what we have in abundance, our agro value chain, because production is not enough. You need to be able to link people, what do we call connecting the dots. How do you produce? How do you process? Do you produce in a way that is working with the environment? Do you process with clean energy so that you are not adding to emissions and pollutions that is causing health problems? And can you engage people to be able to buy this? And that system called innovative volunteerism in Kenya, you have brought in youth and they've created what is called Bago Pamoja. It's an application whereby it brings together clean energy actors, solar energy, biogas. It brings together markets. It brings together value additional, those who can add value to what is being produced. And it's engaging youth to be able to come and get their skills enhanced so that they can add value. And in this way, this will reduce unemployment and at the same time address the aspects of food insecurity. And we've been trying to coordinate with Pastor Minor here, and we're going to build on that to leverage on this innovative volunteerism tool and work with so many youths across the country, especially in Kirinyaga, as we move forward. Because why I'm saying this is there are a lot of opportunities, but sometimes you need to leverage it in a very structured way and engage people based on what they can be able to bring on board, and especially the youth. If someone is good in carpentry, having carpentry skills, he can be able to be guided to start fabricating solar dryers. If someone is good with a marketing skill, he can start marketing those solar dryers to a farmer. If someone is good, he can also be connecting those who dry their vegetables into a market. Because what we are talking at a time when there are a lot of diseases that we see today, but what the science is telling us and practical reality is food that is produced without chemicalized inputs like inorganic fertilizers, and food that is produced using organic manure is more nutritious and have immune boosting compounds as compared to other funny foods that we eat every day, and some of them result to these cancerous aspects. So how we produce and what we eat determines how sharp and smart we are. And cassava is a very crucial crop, and that's why I was saying that should be our flagship crop. Are we saying we should abandon maize and no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying what you have in abundance and what can be able to provide more opportunities, we can tap into that. And that takes me now to the last point, which is to be a leader. Each and every one of us here is a leader in one way or the other, because one do not need to have a position to be a leader. One do not need to have a position to be a leader. And one do not need to have a title to be a leader and to change the world. And this, why I'm saying this is quite very, very important, because there is that misconception sometimes that a leader is only those in political position. No. Each and every one of us, whether it's a kid 1 day old, that is already a leader, because even the way they cry in style. That's leadership. Sometimes you say, stop crying. They take the leadership to stop crying. And leadership, first of all, is personal responsibility. And the first responsibility is responsibility for your own self. So if you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead anybody. If you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead anybody, because leadership is taking personal responsibility. And everyone is a leader. Meaning that we must take personal responsibility to do the right thing, to inspire others, because leadership is also passion, leadership is inspiration, leadership is motivation, and one is never too young or too old to lead. When I speak to young people, what I tell them is that youthfulness is not an entitlement for anything. We were youth ourselves. It's not as if there is a certain generation that have occupied that space called youth that we never ever passed through that. We struggled through that. And what I define youthfulness, I define it that youthfulness is ideas. It's not urge. Sure. If you are young and you don't have ideas and you cannot even be able to humble yourself to learn, you are not a youth. You are a disruptor. So one is never too young or too old to be a leader. And leadership is not about age, but about ideas. It takes passion, inspiration, humility, selflessness, and determination to lead. So leadership means selflessly sharing knowledge, ideas, and working with each and everyone to solve problems. And by doing this, knowing that leadership is about us, firstly, to lead ourselves, we can collectively drive a mindset change that will turn the challenges that we're facing into opportunities. And by that, we will have a society that is hopeful, where we can banish hatred, jealousy, and selfishness, and selflessness will become the norm. Thank you.
Volunteerism, food security, climate action.